Hi guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're talking about everything leashes. Look, if you've ever had your leash snap, had it wrapped around your feet, constantly stepping on it, or indeed you've had that annoying tap, tap, tap every time that you pump, you'll know that it is an important part of your session. So what's the best setup for each discipline? Well, I'm going to talk through my personal setup for prone, winging, downwinding, and power winging. So hopefully you can learn from some of the mistakes I've made and get the best leash out there on the market. So over the years, I've experimented with different types of leashes. There's a couple things that I've noticed. So one is that some are definitely better than others. And two is you can't have just one leash that services all disciplines. They're quite specific, and we're going to go into those individually right now. All right, so let's start with winging. It's the most popular form of foiling, and let's be honest, when you buy a wing, it predominantly comes with the leash itself. Now, this tends to be a wrist leash, and it's definitely what I use for probably about 2 years or so. Now, I no longer use a wrist leash, I'll go on to this in a moment, but some of the fundamentals that I found that were really useful with a wrist leash is that one, it's the right length. Too long and it gets excessive and gets in the way. Too short and you can't flip your wing. So you've got to make sure that's correct. And the way to do that is just to make sure the wingtip just passes through. Any more is excess. It needs to be lightweight so it doesn't impact your experience, and it needs to be strong enough to be able to hold a wipeout in white water or waves so you don't lose your wing in a critical moment. A while back, I ditched the wrist leash and went for a waist leash, which I'll tell you is a complete different experience. And if you haven't tried it, I highly recommend you go out and give it a go. So I think there are two clear benefits of having a waist leash over a wrist leash. The first being your hands are free to be able to do the paddle out. So most of us have to paddle out a distance to be able to put the foil into the water without it hitting the bottom. And also you're going to have to paddle out through either a breaking wave or white water or you name it. So being able to have your hands free to be able to get out back really quickly is critical. And secondly, I've definitely found there are less tangles and a greater sense of freedom by having a waist leash. So I've been using a waist leash from the Foil Board company, which allows me to put both my wing and my board leashes onto the same belt. Now this belt has a quick release system, which means if I need to, I can get rid of both the board and the wing instantaneously, which I have had to do this on several occasions. So with this leash, I love the kite style loop at the back, which allows the board to slide from side to side depending on what tack I'm on. And it's also got two attachment points both on the right and on the left side, depending on which way you prefer to ride for the wing. Now I talked about how strength of a leash is super important, but it's not necessarily the dyneema or the line that breaks. The weak point is really the connection between the wing and the leash itself. Now what they have done in the Foil Board company is come up with a ingenious secondary loop that goes around the handle, so if that weak point does go, you've still got a connection to the wing. Basically, the wing will never disconnect from you unless, of course, you want to by using the quick release. As I said, the waist leash is my weapon of choice, and I'm never going back to using a wrist leash again. I implore you to go out and give it a go if you haven't already. Okay, so moving on to downwinding now, and the key to this is simplicity, being lightweight and being silent. And what I mean by silent is that when you're downwinding, you're generally doing a lot of pumping, and there's nothing more annoying than hearing this tap, 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 where the coil constantly hits the board. So the way to minimize that noise, or indeed eradicate it altogether, is have a very short, tight coil section, and then the latter stages where it connects to the board to be a soft material. I also love to have a handle at the back of the board so that I can maneuver it when I'm going through the shore dump, which is inevitable on my beach break when I finish the run. As I mentioned earlier, it needs to be lightweight so that you can almost forget about it when you're downwinding, but it has to be rock solid. This is your lifeline when you're downwinding, when you're a couple Ks offshore. The last thing you want to do is be separated from your board when you don't want it to be. Now, that being said, when you do want to be separated from your board, it's important you have a quick release. In fact, it is a non-negotiable for me for downwinding that I have an ability to get rid of my board if I need to. Now, prone foiling is all about the calf leash for me. Now, the reason for that is that an ankle leash, I've found that I always end up stepping on the coil itself, which is really annoying. And then a waist leash, it is restrictive in the takeoff. So the two key features I look for is for it to be exactly the right length, too short, and obviously you're not going to have a separation from the board when you need it, and then too long, you're just going to have excess going around. It's also important that there are no straight parts in the leash because that's where tangles tend to happen. And similarly for downwinding, you want it to be absolutely silent, none of this annoying tapping as you're pumping out to catch the next set wave. And then moving on to power winging, look, the jury's out on this at the moment. I'm not completely set in stone with what I use, but I am experimenting with different techniques at the moment. The first being a leash that connects the trail lines or the brake lines to my waist leash. And I think that is definitely the way forward so that you don't tangle and then you can let go of the power wing if you need to. I now always have that on my system when I go out power winging. And then secondly, very much like downwinding, I have a waist leash that connects the board to the back of my harness on a kite style loop at the back. So when I go on the opposite tacks, it doesn't stretch and get in the way. Now, interestingly, I'm actually working with the foil board company to develop a pack-away system. It's something that's really exciting that's going to be coming soon, so watch this space. More on that in the next few months. All right, there you have it. That is a quick down and dirty of my preferences for all the different disciplines in the leash department. It may seem like a nebby little part of your equipment, but trust me, this is a thing that can absolutely make or break a session. As I've mentioned, it can be a lifeline, but it also can be extremely annoying and frustrating and completely ruin a session if you get this wrong. Like with always, please can you like and subscribe to the channel? It really helps me grow and develop and make more content like this. And if you've got any questions, type them below and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. All right, see you on the water again soon.